So I'm not really a YouTuber or anything like that, but I've noticed or realized that there's not many guides on how to actually play the game right now, in terms of like comprehensive or in-depth guides or explanations as to why you do things and when you want to do them. Specifically for Predecessor, obviously. Um, so I went out away, but I decided to make a quick guide for people who want to actually learn how to play the game, and I just did a quick little slide, and I'll add a little vid I have here to show how I use some of these things that I'm talking about in order to win lane or just to survive in a sense. So right off the bat, who am I? I'm known as Hiaris. A lot of you see me as the dude who bitches about how ranked is rigged and stuff like that. A lot of the people who are in plat know me as K-pop Shinbi on my solo queue account. Um, I've only ever peaked at around plat 2. Almost got to plat 1, but then I kind of stopped playing around there. I am a Shinbi main, so yeah, obviously K-pop Shinbi. Like my slide says, I don't think I'm amazing at the game. I just think the player base doesn't understand how to play a MOBA yet, and I feel like that's an issue that many creators don't really talk about or address. So, and this is where this comes in. A lot of the people who watch creators end up just building cheese builds, but don't really understand how those builds work, right? So here I am. I'm going to making this general guide just to teach people a little more about how the game actually works in terms of map and lane. Um, there is one other thing before I continue here, that there is a very big difference between competitive play that you see higher ranked players do and solo queue. And that also applies to 2-mans, 3-mans, and 5-stacks. The game is played very differently depending on whether you have a group or if you're on your alone. You have to play the game extremely different. So first off, minions and Cyan. There's like in lower ranks, around like silver, even in gold, sometimes in plat, they do make this mistake of rushing towards Cyan and giving up the minions. So the reason why this is a bad idea is because Cyan isn't worth as much as you think it is in terms of gold and XP. It is a bonus, right? It is a bonus for you having control of the lane. That is what it is. So when you see people give up Cyan, and I'm gonna give up Cyan, I'm sorry, that they go for Cyan, but then you see that they lose like 4 or 5 minions or something like that, they lost. They're in a negative right there. They just hit a negative. They lost more XP and gold than Cyan will ever give them. So if you want to look up the numbers, you can. I got all these from the Predecessor wiki, just to throw that out there, you know, where this source is coming from. Again, like here, Cyan is about 60 gold, 65 XP, and plus 5 every 5 minutes, right? It's an okay amount. It's nothing great. But then you start looking at what Cannon is worth, and it is only worth 5 gold less, and it is worth 140 XP up until 25 minutes, right? So no matter what, Cannon is always worth more than a Cyan. Always. Range minions and melee minions, it's a little worth less, but I keep a rule of thumb of like, you don't want to give up more than 3 or 2 minions for a Cyan, because the gold difference and the XP difference matters a lot in offlane when you are alone. XP and gold matter, because that is how you're going to make your trades, that is how you're going to get your spikes, right? So the only way or only real reason why you would ever want to get Cyan, or when you should get Cyan, is when your minions are shoved under their tower and they are forced to stay under tower, because that is where you have to, they have to make the decision of whether they want to keep getting the for sure gold and XP, or they want to give up that gold and XP to try to deny you something, right? In most cases, it is not worth trying to steal. It is not, because you will lose more than you gain from it. And if you do fuck that trade up, you just lost 3-4 minions and you're falling behind even harder now, because they got an extra minion compared to you losing 4. So something I think needs to be addressed, I guess, a little bit here, is that there is a small issue with how people ward or understand how warding works and stuff. They just kind of throw wards out just to have them out. Sometimes, you know, they just use the generic spots, whatever. They just put a word out just to have a word out, right? But it's a little deeper than that. And when you're in off lane, you generally understand where the jungler is going to be and when they're going to be there, because well, junglers generally all start red, but they do have slightly different pathing, right? So if depending on what side you're starting on, whether you're starting on this side or the opposite side, like you understand where they're going to start. If you're starting on blue side, you know for a fact, or you should know for the most part, that they are going to be on that side of the map, right? You should know. And the way you counteract this is, if you know they are going to be there, do not shove your lane out, because you will die. That is just the sad fact of how offlane works. If you shove this lane out, you are mostly going to die. In a few ranks, there is the cheese play of going red straight into level 1 gank, and after that level 1 gank, they're going to sit in this blue side. Take all the blue, and if you move up at any point in time, you are going to die. That is sadly just how offlane works right now, because jungle is stupidly easy to rotate in, and you don't lose anything for ganking, realistically. Right? So, if you already know where they're going to start, how they're going to start, for the first few minutes, you don't really need to ward as much, because level 1 to 3, there's not really many options in terms of ganking. They're just going to kind of run at you. So you don't have to worry about it as much, but you can sit towards the left side of your lane, like away from the jungle. Sit away from the jungle on this side, and if they want to try to gank, they're going to have to walk at you, right? Like that's generally the only way for them to realistically gank. So you sit on this side and you'll be safe for a while. So after that, you know that junglers tend to start around the same area, right? So you know that if your jungler is on your blue side now, that they're supposed to be on their blue side. But keep in mind, this is supposed to be. Things can change. People don't follow the same pathing. People don't follow the same playstyle, right? So you can just make assumptions as to where they're going to be at specific times, right? So after that, this is where jungle gets a little weird from time to time, because people have different clearing paths and things like that. You know, like they do weird things, buff to buff, whatever. So this is where the warding comes in. And depending on where you're at in that lane is where you want to drop some of these wards, right? If you're pushed all the way up over here towards their tower, you have no reason to really put wards in your jungle. There's no real reason to, because the real gank paths are going to realistically come from this section here. Realistically, right? If you know, or if your jungle's here, you know, like you need to pay attention to your map, see where people are at different times. But generally, if you're going to be pushed up, you need to worry about this section of the map. These are the more likely gank paths, right? The ones that are immediately behind you or near you. In later games, or if you understand where your jungler's at and things like that, it's a little more complex. If your jungler's on Fang, there is a high likelihood that the enemy jungler is going to be in this blue side. But it's just a trade-off of how the game works, right? But anyways, enough of that. Simple, quick. You should know where your jungler is at, because it's going to mirror yours. Early portions of the game, depending on what side you're on, you should know where the jungler is going to be. You need to play safe if you're on blue side, because early 2 to 3 minutes, there's a chance that you're going to get ganked anywhere from level 1 to level 3. And then right after that, when they're on blue side around like 5-ish minutes, you're probably going to get ganked. Or right before that. Again, jungle pathing's different. So there's this misconception that people like to throw out in offlane, and it's kind of not annoying, but I do think it's kind of idiotic. People like to say, you need to learn how to box, you need to learn how to box, you need to learn how to box, you're not boxing, you're bad, you don't want to fight, and all this stuff like that. Offlane is not about boxing. It really isn't. Offlane is more about wave management and how you manage that wave. Boxing comes in a little differently in offlane. It's not like mid or duo where you want to like fight and assert dominance constantly, right? That's not how it works. In offlane, it's a little more complex, again, because if you're starting on blue side, if you try to box, you're going to get ganked and you're going to die. You need to play offlane more strategically than you do in some of the other lanes, and even in jungles to a certain degree, because you need to play around the fact that you are alone. You are alone, and more often than not, your jungler is not going to help. And that is just part of the lane, and you need to get used to it if you want to play the lane, right? So the reason why it's more about wave management than boxing is, again, you are alone, and characters have different time frames in which they're strong, which they are weak, and when they want to fight and when they don't want to fight, right? Grux in the early game, like who the hell wants to fight Grux level 1, right? Like who the hell wants to do that? You try to fight Grux, he's gonna pop his passive and you are going to lose that fight. Because if he's running the augment for extra omnivamp or lifesteal, he hits like what? Almost 25-26% omnivamp at level 1. You're going to die. You cannot box Grux. In the same regard, if you see Bale and he starts with his ability that gives him omnivamp and damage reduction, plus his third auto, like you don't want to box them. You do not want to box them. There is no point in boxing that. You are going to lose that fight because they have resources that you can't match in a lot of situations. They're getting free omnivamp and they get free damage through passives and stuff like that, right? And most people or most characters are going to lose that boxing match. There is no point, right? You don't want to fight yet. And right here, like if you're a Shinbi, you're going to lose those fights. You cannot match that DPS plus the sustain at level 1. Shinbi is a character that wants to scale a little bit, right? You know, she wants to get items. She wants to get to a point where her abilities are starting to do a little more with the scaling. So there's another misconception here, and this is for the junglers out there. It is not the jungle's job to win your lane. That is not their job. The jungler's job is objectives. That is their job. Getting ganks and getting lanes ahead is a side objective. That's like a side job for them. It is if there is the opportunity to do so that they will take it. If there is an opportunity to do so, awesome, take it. But if it's just you getting your ass kicked, they will ignore your lane and focus on the other lanes that will have their win condition, right? Because if the offlane is absolutely getting destroyed, there is no way to redeem them. And even if you do gank that lane, you feel like they're still going to lose. There is no point being there other than damage control or taking those minions because their offlaner's not going to do it, right? So jungle is not supposed to win your lane. That is a skill issue. But I will say there are some situations in which you are in a losing matchup, and if you play the lane correctly and you manage your wave correctly, it is more likely optimal for your jungle to get that lane. So now we're going to talk about how boxing is, right? Again, some of these things you can use in mid, off, and do, right? These are basic general ideas of how lanes work. But everyone has a specific trade pattern, right? Everyone has a trade. Crunch wants to like in level 3. Crunch wants to dash at you. He's gonna pop his. Usually he'll pop his uppercut straight into his right hook, right? So he can get that true damage off. There's a very specific pattern involved in this. Terra wants to dash at you, throw the axe to slow you, and then Q you to get her full damage out. You know, like everyone has a very specific trade pattern. Shinbi, in most cases, it depends. Shinbi just wants to sit back and poke you to death. But if she does want to all in you, she's going to Q you, pop her shield, dash in on you while the shield is active, auto you, and dash out, look at you, and Q again. Everyone has a certain trade pattern to follow. Bale is in the same situation. He'll probably jump at you, pop his E to get the little damage off, get the slow, and then get his passives, and then Q you to get the toss up. You know, just there's trade patterns that they want to follow in order to get the maximum damage output. So in offlane, or in any lane, realistically speaking, you need to play around those time frames, right? So Greystone runs in, like he jumps in, he pops his empowered auto, and then he pops his AoE. So now you know those abilities are down, right? He's generally weak right now because he cannot trade with you correctly. So if you know he's done that, you can walk up, drop your abilities, beat the crap out of him, and then just walk away. Most Greystones are not going to build sustain in the early portions of the game. They're going to build more like HP stacking or some kind of push build, something like that. There are some that will build sustain, but that's something different. But you do have the ability to fight him. There are small windows in which he will do something, and then you can fight him and force him back. So here we have power spikes, right? This is another part of boxing. You have power spikes. This goes back to when characters are strong, weak, or whatever, etc., right? Shinbi generally doesn't really get a power spike until maybe her level 2 ult, where she has an item or two. That's where she kind of gets her spike, and you can start to see how that starts to kick in some situations where her poke's starting to stick. She's starting to actually damage. She's starting to stick. Her mana isn't falling all over the place. And in the opposite scenario, you start to realize that Grux is getting a little hurt in the lane, right? He's taking some damage. He's not able to land his abilities as easily. He can't get on Shinbi. He can't stick on Shinbi anymore while like keeping his health, right? So that's where that spike comes in. At that point, if Shinbi plays correctly, she beats the crap out of Grux, right? He cannot heal fast enough to out-sustain the poke. And little by little, Shinbi will then get him to about half health, and that's when she will all in, kill him, and then automatically win the lane from there. That the lane's done for Grux at that point. Right? So power spikes do matter. There are some situations, or like if it's a massive skill difference in terms of when you're going to do this and how you're going to do it, if it's a massive skill difference, you can obviously beat characters with at almost any level. It just kind of depends, right? But if we're talking about same skill matchups and things like that, again, power spikes are where you're going to win your fights. Wave management. This is something you don't see very much, even in plat below. You don't really see wave management too much, and I don't really know why, but this is where you can win games off of just understanding how waves work and how to use them to your advantage. This is how you can win games, right? So freezing is a tactic in which you keep some of the enemy minions alive, so that way they have more minions on their side pushing into you. So what this ends up doing is it kills your minions faster than theirs are going to die, right? So this is good for multiple reasons. You can use this to control the wave in your favor. Again, if you're Shinbi or anyone who doesn't have a really strong early game, you can stay in a really safe spot by your tower by freezing this lane. This keeps you in a safer position. Even if Grux wants to all in you or whoever wants to all in you, you can just take a couple steps back and you're safe, right? It also keeps you safe from ganks, because how many junglers are going to try to dive you at level 1 to 5, you know? Who's gonna fucking try to dive you? I mean, very few can, and very few players actually understand how to properly dive. So no, they're not really going to dive you. This is also a good setup for your jungler. This is where the jungler can come in, right? If you're gonna set up ganks for your jungler, you're making it very easy for them to come in. They're more incentivized to do so because it's an easy gank, it's quick, you get their blink out, and that's it. They don't have to kill them. They do not have to kill them. They just need to make pressure for you. They just need to show that they are willing to gank that thing. And so now the enemy offlaner has to be like, well, oh shit. If I do that again, I'm going to die. So this mixed with all the other things going on here. Their minions are dying faster. They have to be a little more afraid of walking up because now the jungler was just there. They're losing minions, and you get to stay in a safe spot and farm for free. There is a con to this though. In the situation where you are in a bad matchup and you're going to lose the early lane, you can't really rotate, because if you try to rotate, you're going to lose a lot of farm if that wave crashes and you're not managing it, right? So the con to this, or the drawback, is if you do this, you cannot rotate. If you rotate, you lose so much more, and it's not really optimal to do so. If you're doing this because you don't want to fight at all, or it's risky to fight at that time frame, right? That you just can't. So now we're going to talk about hard push. Hard pushing is the complete opposite of freezing, obviously. There's different reasons to do this, but primarily it's a way to keep pressure in the lane, right? If you're dominant in the lane, hard push it. Go for it, hard push it. But you need to understand that there are drawbacks to this as well. You are obviously open for ganks. You are so far up, unless you have multiple escapes and blink, you are likely either going to die or you're gonna be near dead. But so if you're gonna do this, you have to do this quick. You need to get the reset, and then you need to leave. I don't think I have it here, but the reset is generally when the minions hit the tower, and the wave state is gonna start pushing in the opposite direction. Because that's just how these lanes work, right? The lanes go back and forth. If it crashes its tower, it's going to slowly push in the opposite direction. So that's what a reset is. The other few reasons to do this is it's how you counter roams, right? Everyone in this game thinks that you have to fight constantly all the time, and that is not true. If you do that with people who are actually decent at the game or understand how to play the game, if you're gonna be roaming nonstop all the time, your enemy laner is going to snowball out of control through farm and XP advantages. And if it is at the same skill level, the enemy team is not going to die to your ganks, right? So what ends up happening is you are now absorbing XP from your mid laner or wherever you roam to. You're absorbing their XP, and then you're losing everything on the opposite side of the map, or wherever you came from, right? You're losing all that golden XP that's sitting there. Enemy gets plates, enemy gets advantages, and so when you go back to that lane, eventually you're going to be down a level or 2 levels. You're down almost 1,000 gold, and you find that you can no longer even get near them without losing all your HP. There is another situation in which you would want to push your lane, but it's if your jungler is invading the enemy jungle and you are there. It is probably the best idea, usually the best idea, to try to apply pressure to that lane. So in case there is a ward there, or in case they start roaming towards him, the enemy is forced to decide whether they're going to pick up that wave he just shoved into the tower, or they try to commit to that kill. In either situation, they are forced to pick one or the other. Offlane is literally just, it's a game of forcing the enemy to pick between two different things, right? You either, if they're going to roam, they lose something. If they're going to stay in the lane, well, you're going to force them to do something else, right? If they're going to stay in the lane, you can do something. If they're going to leave, you force them to say, well, you know what, you lose all this. It's a game of trades, pretty much, in Offlane. Like, you have to trade something. You can never give them something for free. So, slow pushing. Slow pushing is a little more later into the game, when towers are kind of down or things like that. You know, it is something you can do in the early portions of the game, but it's not really as important for offlane. Generally speaking, slow pushing is where you have more minions on your side, and you try to keep the melee minions on the enemy wave alive, so that way they can tank the brunt of the damage. And it creates this situation where one wave is going to start stacking minions on it, and then slowly build up and push towards the other side. The reason why you do this is you do this for, well, you can do this for 2 reasons, to be honest. There's 2 different reasons. You can do this to stack the wave and force fights towards the enemy the enemy offlaner, because if you're able to stack your wave up and they fight you in that wave, they are going to lose so much more HP than you are, and it's like it's a 2v1 situation. So you can win fights by stacking the wave and forcing them, or if they decide to fight into you. This gives you the ability to gain control of the lane in a safe way, and gets you free farm, and it forces the enemy offlaner to back up a little bit, right? And the more important sense of how to do this or use this is later in the game where objectives are more important, right? You're talking about third fang, primal, and things like that. So what this does is, if you're going, or your team wants to set up for primal fang, you set up this slow push. So within the next 30 seconds or so, this leaves the enemy team or the enemy offlaner in a situation where you have about 2 waves crashed into their tower. Again, offlane is about making enemies decide between 2 options. So now that you've done this, they either lose 2 waves of minions, possibly lose their tower, or they go fang and try to get that, right? They can never get anything for free. Never give the enemy anything for free. They have to make decisions based on how you play the map. So now we're going to talk about roaming. Roaming is kind of like a double-edged sword in a sense, depending on how you want to do it and when you want to do it. I will say there are situations where if you are behind, it is probably the best situation to roam, because you are not doing anything in your lane. You're falling further and further behind. And at that point, I mean, you might as well try to get a gank out here and there. But those are very rare situations, and you still need to understand how and when to do them. The reason why the constant roaming in lower ranks is generally bad is because you're giving up XP if you don't know how to roam. You're giving up your gold, you're giving up your lane control, and you are going to fall behind If you are not getting consistent kills constantly on every round, you are going to fall behind. And then when you end up going back to your lane, you're going to find out that the enemy who played the correct, who's still farming, who's catching all the XPs, getting cyans, and he's getting free plates off of you, is now somehow beating the crap out of you, even though you have kills. Or even though you've been roaming and trying to help your team, right? You're going to get your ass kicked because you will fall behind. When you want to roam is more around when you have control of that lane. Let's say your lane is pushed up all the way, cyan is down, you know it's going to start slowly pushing back, you're full health, you're full mana, well, that's time to go. Go roam to mid lane, roam to fucking dual lane. You go get a quick little gank off, back, and then you get back to your lane before you lose anything. If you do lose something, you lose like 1 or 2 minions, right? Because of how the lane is pushing. But you want to make it so that if you're going to roam, you want to roam with the minimal amount lost for doing so. Alright, here's some quick tips for you guys, because I mean there's things that people believe and or don't really understand about how the game works. Like, people want to fight non-stop because I think every fang is important, or they think that you have to fight everything at all times to keep control, but that's not always the case. That is almost never the case in all honesty. If your team is a scaling team, you don't want to fight everything. You want to wait until you want to fight. You want to be in the position to fight. You don't want to be forced to fight. In the same regard that the other team has something like Rux and all these like early game characters, Rux, Boris, Kai, things that want to box you at like the early portions of the game, right? Well, why do you want to walk into that? You want to wait till you are strong enough to fight them. You don't want to fight them when they're strong just because you feel like you need to. There's times and place for fights. So, again, I just said this earlier. If your jungler is invading, apply pressure to that lane so that way it's safer for them to do so, and you can rotate faster than the enemy can in order to get to any situation that happens here. The only real fang that matters in the game is third fang. And the reason why I say that's the only one that matters is because the other two buffs are quite irrelevant. It's extension on the blue buff and red buff duration, and I think some movement speed, if I'm not mistaken. So those are kind of negligible. And people like to say like, oh, but what about the gold and the XP advantage? Well, you can legitimately mitigate that by controlling your wave, right? Let's say a mid lane and duo offlane all go to Fang, right? Well, the options left for you in the lanes, if you don't want to fight that, or you are not in the position to fight that, is, well, let's freeze the wave. Or let's hard push it, right? Let's freeze or hard push. You by doing so, you reset your entire lane state, right? If you know they're on Fang, you reset your entire lane state. If you hard push mid, they lose about, in the early portion of the game, it's a little more important, right? You push out, they lose 2-3 minions, give or take, right? It may not sound like a lot, but that mitigates how much XP and gold they're actually getting from Fang. You're cutting that gain down because you're gaining what they are losing, kind of thing, you know? So there are ways to mitigate that situation. It's not as big a deal as people think it is. So this goes back to CS wins games. In a lot of lower ranks, people just want to fight, and they don't know why they're fighting a lot of the times or when they're fighting, and they will give up their CS just to fight. So CS is one of the most important resources in the game, or is the most important resource in the game. It is your primary way of getting gold and XP. If you are giving this up just to try to hit people, and they are slowly getting CS leads over you, that means they have more gold than you have, right? So they are slowly building items, and item spikes matter. If you don't only have pieces of items, but the enemy has a complete item, they get that extra bonus damage or bonus defenses from those items, making you that much weaker. So this is what I talked about this earlier, how competitive play is different from solo queue. And it's a whole different beast, because competitive play, people are playing around the same assumptions, the same ideologies, and they're going to play in a much more strategic and controlled manner. They're not going to randomly fight you. They are not going to chase you. They are not going to make bad plays. They're not going to fight things just to fight them, right? So it's a completely different beast altogether. So when you're talking about solo queue, in a lot of situations, team comps don't really matter until you're about maybe like high plat, mid plat, and up. and that's where it starts to matter a little more. But in lower ranks, it doesn't matter in much of a sense because people don't really understand how to abuse these situations or teams, right? It's like if you see a team like in bronze, right? If you see a bronze team running some kind of AoE team with let's say Gadget, Zarus, Adele, whatever, like AoE team, a good one, right? With Sparrow on it. But they're not actually team fighting. It doesn't really matter that they have that team, if that makes more sense. You know, if the team doesn't, if they're not using the team strength, it doesn't matter. And in solo queue, that's kind of a rare occurrence, especially in lower ranks, for them to actually use them properly. So team comps in the lower ranks don't really matter, and it's more about whether how you know how to play that specific lane, gain your advantage, and then use that advantage in other lanes. Again, I made this primarily because I see a lot of people using creator builds and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, some of them are okay. They're not terrible by any means. But the reason why a lot of those builds work and or work for them specifically is they know how to play the game and they know how those items interact with the characters they are using. A lot of these builds literally rely on understanding a little bit of the inner workings of how characters and trade patterns work, right? So if you don't know how to use those trade patterns or how the character generally works, the build isn't really going to work for you. It's just gonna, you're just gonna die on repeat, to be honest. So I've discussed the small differences between comp and solo queue and things like that, and this is where this other part comes in. There are meta differences between ranks, and you can see it pretty easily. In lower ranks, they play a lot of Sparrow, Chimera, Boris, Iggy. They play a lot of characters that don't really require you to understand how to play the game, other than I'm just gonna run it. And the reason why this happens is generally it's a skill difference. The easy way to explain it is it's a skill diff. The lower level players don't really understand how to counteract or how some of these characters work, right? So things that work in lower lobbies don't really work in higher level lobbies. Wards will stop a lot of those ganks. CC will stop Boris. Understanding how to deal with Iggy just makes them completely useless. Sparrow is strong, but she is weak to hard CC, and things of that nature. You know, like it's just a skill difference and why some of these like the rank differences or meta differences between ranks are the way they are. So my recommendation, and this is my recommendation for all ranks right now, the top two bans need to be Aurora and Neon. And the reason why I say these need to be top bans is because Aurora is one of those characters that has a stupid amount of CC, a stupid amount of damage, can gank, can play support, can play offlane, is extremely difficult to lock down, it's extremely difficult to kill, but even if she is behind, she has a stupid amount of pressure because she has like three different forms of CC that are extremely easy to land. She's extremely difficult to deal with, regardless of where she is on the map and how far behind or ahead she is. She's extremely difficult to kill, so even if she is shoved up, it is hard for you to deal with her. So you need to, she needs to go. Yes, you can lane into her and things of that nature, but the impact that she has in the game as a whole is where it's kind of an issue. It's not so much her laning pressure, it's more that you can't really shut her down in lane, you can't really kill her, and she will always have more pressure or more priority on the map because of all the CC she provides her team. Neon is one of those characters that she's just I mean, even if she misses something, she's gonna pop you. Neon is at the point, or she's at that point where her abilities do a lot of damage, but they're also so huge, it's near impossible to miss any of it. For context, her Q, her empowered Q, the little ball she throws out and comes back, when it is empowered, it procs 3 different times. So if she has combustion, she does 4 different procs of damage within that one ability. And even if that ability misses, there is a massive AoE on it, if it is empowered, that will proc true damage, which will also proc combustion. So even if she does miss, you are still going to take damage. And in terms of 1v1, she lands one ability on you, and you are going. That is the sad reality of how that character is working right now. So, in terms of builds, again, I feel like this is something that's in the lower ranks you see a lot. It's kind of weird to me that I guess they're used like not I don't know if they're using auto build sometimes or if it's their own build or they're following the build, right? But I do see a lot of offlaners in lower ranks like gold below who randomly build Absolution as their first item, right? I don't know why they're building it. And if I'm not mistaken, I may be saying that wrong here. I'm not going to really look it up. But Absolution is the carry item that reduces incoming damage from when you get CC'd, right? And it's an okay item. It is. But you would much rather build something else as your first item in Offlane, especially if there is no CC. I see people building this item into characters like Shinbi who can't CC you. So it's kind of you wasted all that gold for a dead passive. You want to build around what your character does, right? You don't want to randomly build tank items on the Shinbi. You know, like you just randomly build 1 or 2 tank items on Shinbi, and then you're wondering why she's slowly dying to Grux. She can't do damage. You know, like, or you're building random damage items on Steel, but then you realize he can't really kill anything because he's dying too fast. You, as an offlaner, you're generally going to be the tank or a bruiser. So you want to build a little tanky, a little with some utility stuff on there, while also being able to do some damage. You know, like maybe Sky Splitter, or you build Overlord or something like that, right? That's generally how you want your bruiser to build. You will build some defensive items. You build Salvation for the extra shield, extra healing, and such. And then you do want to build some defensive items so that you can still, you know, be in the front line and not instantly die. It's kind of the same thing for tank as well. Your primary damage items are probably going to be Frost, Fist of Razul, Ella Frost, and Fire Blossom, you know, things like that. That's your primary damage item, and then you want to go full tank and just kind of build on top of that. There are situations where, I mean, obviously in Aegis, Quang it has a variation of builds he can do. Aurora is the same thing. She can go full tank. She can go kind of bruiser magic. She can go full magic. Shinbi obviously wants to go full magic. Countess wants to go full magic. I mean, there are tank builds, but I mean, it's one of those things you need to know how to play. Iggy is gonna go full damage. You just need to understand what your character wants to do and how they need to do it, while also understanding what the enemy team has, and wants to do to you. You want to try to counter build in order to make sure that the enemy team can't do what they want, or at least not do it as efficient. This is just a quick little ranking of what I think should be for the offlane. Again, this is my personal ranking. I'm not saying this is law. I'm not saying this is where it is and things like that. I'm just saying this is kind of my experience in terms of how good you have to be to deal with some of these characters in comparison to what you're playing, right? So I'm not really going to talk about the weak ones here. I'll just say that I have them weak because there are characters that don't really function as well as they used to, or they don't really do what you want an offlaner. They lack in certain regards. Like they'll lack in damage, they lack in push, they lack something that other characters can do better. Right? For example, Mako just has a lot of mobility. He's just annoying, but he doesn't really do much off of that anymore. Skylar is annoying, but I mean, once she falls down, she dies. No, that's just how it is. Sereth is cool and all, but she doesn't provide enough in the lane, like in the early portions of the game or late portions of the game, for it to matter. They're okay in very specific situations. They are not great. Average ones are, I mean, they're just okay. You can pick them and you'll do fine in them. They're not bad. They're not terrible. They're just kind of like there. They're okay. They're not gonna hard win lanes. They're not gonna hard win every single lane, but they're also not gonna just lose. Strong ones right now. These guys are a little easier to play. They do a little bit of damage. They have some kind of mobility. They can frontline. They can damage. They can CC. They can lock down teams. Whatever you want, right? These guys are strong picks. These are good, and you just need to generally know how to work some of these to win against someone with the same skill bracket. Greystone, Quang, Yin, Zaris, Bale, Sevarog, Terra, and Eden. I have Sevarog on here because if you at least understand how to survive the lane, you're going to scale. And almost no one can deal with you once you've hit that part of the game. Like, almost no one, if you're at least at the same level and you have your stacks. So from my broken tier, I have Aurora and Yuri. I already spoke about Aurora. Yuri in the offlane is just kind of one of those menaces. Like, her mobility makes her extremely difficult to deal with, extremely difficult to lock down. Her passives give her extra damage. They give her even more mobility. I think when she beats your soul or kills the soul thing, she does even more damage. And she has a variation of builds she can do because, I mean, she can go bruiser, she can go straight assassin into the offlane. You know, she's extremely difficult to deal with. And she doesn't need to know how to play as much as you do to lock her down. There are counters to her, like if she tries to all in. Grux is one of those that can kind of deal with a lot of these characters. Because if she tries to all in ult, he just ults and she drops. Okay, so that is all for this. And I wanted to show a little quick video or clip of how I try to put a lot of these ideas I'm telling you guys together and how it works in the lane, right? This is against the Greystone. And I mean, I know he's this is like lower tier Greystone. He's not great. He's not amazing by any means. I think they were a 4-stack, and I just got kind of annoyed and decided to, you know what? I guess I'm gonna try hard. This is what happens. So right here, he pops his AoE, right? I know he popped his AoE, so I go in and I start beating the crap out of him. I realized that he's focusing on the lane more than on me. He's trying to get lane control. So I start hitting him because he's not hitting back. I realize his AoE is down again, so I'd be a little more aggressive. Right now, he's in my wave that's larger, so if he tries to hit me, he's going to take more damage. Right? Just keeping control of the wave. He is desperately trying to shove my lane in, and every time he tries to do that, I am just dropping more and more damage on him. Cooldowns are down. I back up now. I take the minimal amount of damage while doing the most that I can to him. See, I don't know where Boris is at right now. I don't have wards up, right? I dropped that ward because we played against these people the game before, and they had a tendency of just camping my ass, right? So I learned my lesson. So right here, he gave up, I think, 2 minions already for that. So realistically, I didn't really lose much for him getting Cyan. Like, I really didn't. So I'm going to walk up to make sure I get that cannon. I know his abilities are down, so I'm going to walk up, clear the wave, because he can't really fight back. I'm just trying to clear the wave, so that way it's a little easier to deal with. So notice how we're the same level now, because he missed those minions, right? The minions he gave up to get Cyan evened out what we have. We're the same level. Again, he's using all his abilities. I'm just trying to clear the wave out right now to deal with it, because he just wants to shove wave in. I know he still has cooldowns, and I know my shield will block some of that damage anyways, so I went in and I made a quick trade. This is where I start trying to freeze the wave a little bit. See right here, we're freezing the wave just a little bit. I know he just wants to fight. Again, he's face tanking my wave. I'm going to punish him for that. So now he's in a position where he's not really strong enough to fight me. He used a lot of his resources. I have more HP, I have more mana. So now I'm freezing the wave here. And this is where the gold advantage starts to build up. Because of all the things I'm doing, and how I'm freezing wave and not giving up minions for Cyan, he's starting to so slowly behind. Right now it's about a 300 gold difference, right? And he's still afraid to walk up. I'm just gonna slowly push this, And as he walked up, I am going to punish him for that. There you go. Now he has to leave. If he stays, he will die. I have now made my gold lead, 15 CS gold lead. I'm slowly building my lead now, right? So this is where I'm going to hard push this lane, because I know I have advantage in it. I need to push this out. I know from the map that red camps are up, or are coming up, right? They're going to come up. So I have free reign in this lane right now. So now I hard push the lane, and this is my opportunity to leave, because it is under his tower. I can't lose anything realistically, and I know Cyan isn't up for a little bit. So I just leave. On a side note, when you back, you kind of want to buy as quickly as possible, or you waste a little too much time, right? You waste a little more time than you want. And then here we go again, right? He's going for Cyan, and he is losing minions right now. He is losing a lot of minions, and this is what I'm going to talk about right now. You see how I'm already a level up on him, right? Because of what how much XP and gold he gave up last time by sitting back. He's going to lose a cannon right now. He lost the cannon. He lost the cannon. And now I'm just even further ahead. I am now 20 CS ahead, 400 gold up. Within the span of about a minute, I gained another 100 gold over him. So now we're slow pushing this, right? And the reason why I'm slow pushing this right now is because I want this wave to stack up as it pushes. So even, like, it's going to land right in front of him or something like that. So here I want to hard push it, because now I want it to crash. I know I have item advantage over him, so I can pressure him now. And I have wave advantage, so I'm going to push this up. I don't know why he ults there, and he's not really a threat to me at this point, because I can just kind of walk away, right? He is no longer a threat. I know that all his cooldowns are down. The only thing he has is jump, maybe. And he dies. You have to play around those abilities, because the abilities are the major ways all these characters are going to do anything to you, right? You play around them, and if they don't use them properly, they are useless. So now from here, I am now up almost 40 CS? Yeah, I'm up almost 40 CS. I'm up 1,000 gold. I got a free kill. I'm about to be 2 levels up. It's literally just being able to control your wave, understanding how and when to trade is how you can win your lane. And once you win that lane hard enough, you can influence a lot of the other parts of the map by literally levels, what, 7 minutes in? 7 minutes in, and this lane is already over for Grace, so he cannot play the game anymore. If he tries to walk up, he will die. If he tries to fight me, he will lose. I am up in gold. I am up in XP. XP matters because levels give you stats, right? So every level that you're up on the enemy is extra stats that they do not have. So XP matters and gold matters. The more items you have, or the better items you have, means the enemy cannot fight you as efficient. They are down in stats or passives because they just can't match you. Okay, so, I mean, that's pretty much it for what I wanted to talk about. Again, I am not the best player in the world, nor do I ever think so. But a lot of people don't really understand the basics of how the game works and how it can work. Everyone just wants to fight all the time, but that's not really what you need to do. You need to understand when you can fight and why you're fighting. In the same regard, like, if you have only your junglers up, and you're begging them to go to fucking Fangtooth, and it's only the first Fang, you're an idiot. I'm sorry, but you're bad. If he goes, what exactly is the jungler going to do in a situation where they're in a 4v1 or a 5v1? What exactly do you think your jungler's going to do? In the early portions of the game, your jungler is the one who dictates whether you're going to get objectives or not, right? If your jungler wants to prioritize getting leads through farming, by all means let them, and understand that they are not going to go to that Fang. They a lot of times will tell you, I'm not going to do Fang because of, I'm not going to be there because of, you know. There's different ways to play that, but generally speaking, I just want people to understand that you don't have to fight everything 24/7. There is no point to doing so unless you have the understanding of why you're doing it and you know you have the advantage in doing it. If you're not, you're just inting.